How did an Italian businessman with no diplomatic office make armed fascists treat him like Spain's consul? After Angel Sanz Briz left Budapest in early December 1944, Giorgio Perlasca falsely claimed to be Spain's acting representative. He used an existing rescue system of protection papers, safe houses, staff and local collaborators to keep thousands from deportation. The title was invented. The system behind it was real. Before he became the false consul, Perlasca had a past that does not fit a simple hero story. He had volunteered with fascist forces in Ethiopia and in the Spanish Civil War. He learned Spanish while serving on Francisco Franco's side and received a document promising Spanish assistance to foreign volunteers. His support for Italian fascism later weakened, especially as Mussolini aligned Italy with Nazi Germany and introduced anti-Jewish laws. But that change does not erase his earlier choices. Perlasca was not a lifelong resistance figure waiting for one noble mission. He was a compromised man who would later choose to take an extraordinary risk. By 1942, he was working in Hungary as the representative of an Italian company that imported beef. When Italy signed an armistice with the Allies in September 1943, Perlasca refused to recognize the German-backed Italian Social Republic. After Germany occupied Hungary in March 1944, the Hungarian authorities interned him. He escaped in October and returned to Budapest. Hungary's Jews were already living through catastrophe. Between mid-May and early July, about 435,000 people had been deported, most of them to Auschwitz. Budapest's Jewish population had been spared the mass deportations for a time. Then, in October, Germany helped the fascist Arrow Cross party seize power. The Arrow Cross brought street terror, forced labor, death marches, and murder on the banks of the Danube. People without protection were pushed into an overcrowded ghetto. A second area, later called the International Ghetto, held buildings claimed by neutral states. The difference between those spaces could be a flag, a typed letter, and whether an armed man decided to respect either one. Protective papers were not passports in the ordinary sense. They were diplomatic claims. A neutral government was saying that this person, this family, or this building mattered to it. The claim might make a local official hesitate, especially while the Arrow Cross government wanted recognition from countries that had not accepted it. But the paper was never magic. It could be challenged, ignored, or destroyed. Spain's real representative, Angel Sanz Briz, had built one of those protection systems. Yad Vashem records that he first received permission to protect 200 people connected to Spain. He treated the number as families, then expanded it again. His staff issued protection letters, rented buildings, placed them under Spanish flags, and organized food for their residents. That famous numerical trick was only the beginning. A credible protected house needed a registered address, lists of residents, seals, letterhead. Staff who could answer a challenge, and someone willing to confront the men at the door. Jewish organizers and local employees carried messages, found food, maintained lists, and connected threatened families to the diplomats. Perlasca first entered this system because his Spanish Civil War document helped him obtain Spanish protection for himself. Sanz Briz then used him in the legation's rescue work. Perlasca spoke the language, understood the paperwork, and had seen how the system operated from inside. He was offered a way out to Switzerland. He chose to remain in Budapest. In early December, Spain ordered Sanz Briz to leave. Remaining in the capital could imply recognition of the Arrow Cross government, which Madrid wanted to avoid. Once the real diplomat had gone, the Spanish houses could lose the authority that made them different from any other apartment building. This is where Perlasca's bluff began. He claimed that Sanz Briz was only temporarily away and that he, now calling himself Jorge, was the legal replacement. Madrid had made no such appointment, yet the legation still had official seals, letterhead, house records, lower-ranking staff, and a secretary. Perlasca placed his false title at the top of a real administrative machine. The first reason the bluff could work was uncertainty. Communication with neutral capitals was slow, Budapest was under siege, and a local official could not instantly confirm every diplomatic appointment. The second reason was political. Perlasca joined negotiations with the regime and suggested that Spain might recognize its authority. That promise was not his to make, but the possibility gave Arrow Cross officials something to lose. The third reason was physical. The protected houses already existed. Residents were already registered. Spanish flags, seals, and documents were already visible. Rejecting Perlasca did not mean exposing one liar. It meant openly testing a network that claimed the protection of a neutral state. But the documents remained fragile. Arrow Cross gangs entered protected houses, pulled people into the street, and challenged their papers. The system survived only when someone renewed the claim in person. Perlasca and those working with him had to negotiate, demand releases, restore residents to lists, find food, and keep the houses functioning day after day. Yad Vashem records that Perlasca worked with the legation's advisor, Dr. Farkas, and with the underground activist Laszlo Shamosi. It reports that he went to Arrow Cross jails and intervened along death marches and at the border. Some people were returned because a Spanish letter gave an official a reason to pause. Those actions were dangerous, but they were not performed by one man operating alone. Protected houses also had to keep people alive between confrontations. Food, heating, illness and overcrowding could destroy a shelter without a raid. A surviving letter from residents of the house at 35 Shent, Istvan Park later thanked Perlasca for organizing food and caring for elderly and sick people during the final weeks. The surviving paperwork matters because it changes the shape of the story. The rescue was not only a sequence of dramatic street encounters. It was also inventories, resident lists, collective safe conducts, signatures, rationing and repeated visits. Perlasca's false office worked because dozens of ordinary administrative tasks made the fiction look continuous. How many people did it protect? Yad Vashem and official Spanish histories commonly connect the Spanish operation with more than 5,000 lives. That number should not become Perlasca's personal score. It includes the system built by Sanz Briz. The staff and Jewish collaborators who sustained it, the people Perlasca defended after the diplomat left, and the uncertain boundaries of documents that were copied, expanded or ignored. Perlasca was also one part of a much larger rescue effort. Rayer Wallenberg, Karl Lutz, Angelo Rotter, Friedrich Born and other neutral representatives operated papers and shelters. Jewish organizations supplied the knowledge. Labor and networks that made diplomatic protection reach actual families. Thousands more survived by hiding, by chance or because the military situation changed. The international ghetto was reached by Soviet forces on January 16, 1945. The main Budapest ghetto was liberated over the next 2 days, while fighting for the city continued into February. Perlasca's invented office had lasted only about 6 weeks. For the people inside the Spanish houses, those weeks were the distance between exposure and survival. Afterward, Perlasca returned to Italy, and the story remained little known. Decades later, women who had survived in Budapest searched for him and brought his actions into the public record. Yad Vashem recognized him as righteous among the nations in 1988. That recognition does not turn his life into a clean moral fable. It shows something more demanding. A person with a compromised past can still become responsible for what he does next, and institutions built by many people can depend on one person refusing to let them collapse. So how did an Italian businessman with no diplomatic office make armed fascists treat him like Spain's consul? He inherited real papers, houses, staff and collaborators. Then gambled that Budapest's killers would hesitate before testing whether the man defending them had a real title.